software, editing software do you use?
Audacity.
Audacity? Okay. Someone just called. Let me just turn off my phone. Spam. All right. You might have to have more conversation on me than this. Although, you know, I got enough, but still.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be fine.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Are you ready?
I am.
Okay. Okay, here we go. Country Dog City Dog, episode 14.
And that's rolling.
Yeah. Country Dog City Dog, episode 14 in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You're listening to Country Dog, City Dog. My name is Kevin Levy.
And I'm Don Merrill.
And today, let's have a topic on school policies. What do you think about that?
What kind of school policies?
How should we broaden that to? What do you think?
I don't know.
How about something about the wokeism in America, or critical race theory,
Great.
or how about
Sounds like so much fun.
or school policies in general, how they affect teachers, students, kids, parents.
Well, okay. So before we start talking about that, you know, there's like a whole history of how we got to CRT.
Critical race theory.
Yeah, and you know, it's like, okay, so CRT is defined as being aware of the things in culture and being attentive to important racial and social justice issues. It started back in 2014 with the Black Lives Matter movement. But it's been around since the early 20th century, you know, and it was sort of a way to warn black people to keep their eyes open. Okay, we talk about woke. That's what woke is about. I mean, CRT and all this stuff before, all this stuff that came after, really came from this whole idea of being woke. And woke was sort of like a warning to people of color. It's like, you know, be aware of what's going on around you. You know.
I feel woke, that term has expanded. It has broadened, and I feel everyone might have a different terminology of what it means, and that's one of the things that's quite interesting is there's not a set exact definition of that term, and that I've heard of, at least from anyone that I've had a conversation with.
Well, it's not like a term in and of itself. It's like, you know, it came from a bunch of other stuff. Like, everybody remember political correctness? Okay?
Yeah.
And then after political correctness, there was this thing called virtue signaling. Okay? So it's like, virtue signaling is like, it's this, when people try to show you that they're a good person by using words or expressing opinions that they think that you'll find acceptable, right? And it implies that, you know, like if I'm virtue signaling to somebody else, then, you know, I'm kind of not being sincere, you know, because I'm saying that, like, for instance, if I virtue signal somebody else, me doing that lets them say that I'm virtue signaling them, you know, because then I'm like passing judgment on what they're not, and then by doing that, they can say, well, you're not because you're doing it to me. And I mean, this is how bad it's gotten. This is how bad it's gotten.
Yeah, you know, school policies that are meant to ban something, I feel that is right there a division. It is creating a division in our population. A school policy that is banning critical race theory, the teaching of, that's meant to divide how I see it. It is pitting people against each other. It's creating a divide in how I see it of rural and urban America. And it's a divide based off of fear-mongering. And it doesn't seem justified. I cannot find examples where critical race theory is harming, the teaching of is harming our children.
I gotta tell you, Kevin, I'm not even to critical race theory yet. I'm still going back, over the history of how we sort of got to critical race theory. It's like, okay, I was talking about political correctness earlier, right? So, PC was, when people try to avoid expressions or actions, that, certain marginalized groups can say are being used against them, right? So it's like avoiding microaggressions and not discriminating against people who have been historically discriminated against, So now we've gone through virtue signaling, we've gone through political correctness, we've gone through all these other things. Let's see, what was the other one? The woke phenomenon. Okay. So what is CRT? CRT, the thing about CRT, the name is critical race theory, but it's not critical as in to criticize, right? Because critical is an academic term, like critical thinking. So the whole idea is to give people a way to critically evaluate what they're seeing and hearing, right? We tell ourselves that we want our kids to be able to think critically, right? And so that's what CRT, it's in the name, but it's code for so many people. They hear it and they think, automatically, whatever it is, I'm against it. And it's like, go ahead, Kevin, go ahead.
Well, I think what I want to know, as I was just mentioning earlier, is critical race theory harming our children? Is the teaching of that in our schools harming our children? I don't see any evidence of it. I can see the division that certain politicians, political groups, and media is trying to portray, that it is creating a divide. It is making it, they're saying how white people should be afraid of the teaching of this because it's going to turn others racist against white people, and I don't see the evidence of that.
Well, what it does is what CRT does is it looks at how culture has shaped culture, and it looks at the race, whether it's Hispanic or Black, Native American Indians, Asians, Pacific Islanders, as well as white people, but now it's also started to include LGBTQ. And this is where CRT has started to be an issue in schools, right? Because it used to be that, when you were trying to point out racial and ethnic disadvantages of one group or another, it used to be like before the 1950s, it was all about biogenetics, right? That's the reason why we have these distinctions. Because certain groups of people aren't smart enough, they aren't moral enough, they aren't worthy enough, they aren't ambitious enough. And you had eugenics justifying that. Eugenics is junk science from from the colonial world from like the 1700s and 1800s, measuring people, phrenology, measuring the bumps on people's heads to decide how smart they were. I mean, just crap. Just crap. But entire cultures were built on top of that stuff. So now CRT and all the stuff that came before it, all the stuff that led up to it, is an issue because, like the person who originated the whole CRT curricula, she said people in schools who have figured out a way to attack CRT, they have a brilliant strategy for attacking it. She said that, former president, was the first who decried CRT in 2020, coincidentally at a time when he was down in the polls. And he and other people who also wanted to put it down, you know, they encouraged people that whenever there was anything that made them feel badly about culture or about themselves or about our history, blame it on CRT. And so that was so easy for so many people to do. And so now that's what CRT is. CRT sort of is the bucket that holds all of the stuff that people have put on it.
Yeah, you know, I remember having conversations with friends, and I have some Republican friends, and they use, to jump back to the word woke, which you were bringing up earlier, they were using that word as a trigger phrase. Oh, those woke people, they just don't get it. And I was asking my friend, what does she mean by that? What do you mean by woke? That woke person doesn't get it. And I was like, what do you mean? Because I was not able to clearly define it. And she's like, well, you know, the woke, she's just woke.
You know, because I'm white and you're white, so automatically we both know, right?
And I couldn't get her to tell me clearly what it meant. So she was criticizing people with a term that she could not even explain, but she heard it on her favorite opinionated news broadcasting station, and because she's hearing it, she is now saying it out to me and to others, regardless if she can even explain what it actually means. And I've spoken to other people, and they might have some legit concerns or comments of what it is, like, oh, they're just overly sensitive liberals. You know, the ones who want to ban plastic straws. And yeah, like, I love my plastic straw, to tell you the truth. I don't like those paper straws.
Oh man,
they're the worst.
When McDonald's had paper straws, it's like I would just throw them away. It's like I just drink out of the cup. It's
right.
Like, I drink out of plastic. I drink out of straws because that's the way you're supposed to drink out of a Diet Coke at a fast food restaurant. But I'm not drinking out of a plastic straw.
When there's water bottle companies are producing millions and millions of plastic water bottles, and we're not properly disposing of that. And then there are some liberals that want to ban it away. It's not a large majority, if I had to guess, but I don't think straws. But I think what's happening is the media, right-wing media, is over-amplifying a few individuals who have proposed that into law to ban plastic straws, and is creating a media frenzy, like, oh, they're just woke. And I'm sure there's other examples, like, oh, you can no longer say ladies and gentlemen because it might be disrespecting non-binary folks.
Right.
And
you can't say Merry Christmas. You have to say Happy Holiday. I mean, you know, it's like, okay, so people have their own traditions. They have their own ways of looking at the world and saying things in ways that make them feel like they belong to the world. I understand that totally. You know, and this whole thing about CRT, I mean, CRT is a graduate level course. It's not even taught in K through 12, right? But the place where CRT and woke and PC and virtue signaling, where all that stuff overlaps, is in school libraries. Mm-hmm. That's where it overlaps. Because, you know, like, okay, so you have all these children's authors who respond to all this angst in the culture, you know, about discrimination among the races, among LGBTQ, among the handicapped, women, the aged. And so they create books to try to help, you know, show kids at their level what's going on in the world other than what their parents tell them, you know. And I know parents, you know, feel like, well, parents should be, but, you know, culture is a very powerful thing. And that's why a lot of people don't like culture, because culture exposes them and theirs to stuff that they would rather keep away from them. But these books get printed, you know, and the whole idea is to try to show that there's another reality, and there is another way of looking at the reality you're in. But those books, a lot of those books, that are sold in Barnes and Noble and sold in Powell's, also end up getting bought by schools and end up on school bookshelves, in school libraries. And that is where the problem is, it seems to me.
Yeah. As I like to say, look, if it's not affecting you directly, if it's not causing you any injury, then respectfully, get over it. Get over the wokeism. It's not affecting you. It's media frenzy. It's political garbage that is meant to divide, and it doesn't make sense. And look, I could see it both ways. Being overly woke, for as some would say, is meaning like tossing out classic books from authors that are with unacceptable terminology.
No, that's backwards. Being overly woke would be, retaining as many of those authors as you can, right? As many of the authors that represent diverse personalities as possible. Okay.
What do you feel that "Baby, it's cold outside," where that would be the woke culture who wants to no longer have that song in today's society
I see what you're saying.
because they feel that's
See, it's confusing because I was thinking, okay, so the people who are very liberal in mind would want to have all of the volumes about all of the subjects that are expansive but at the same time,
it goes both ways.
It does go both ways. Even on one side of the political spectrum, it can go both ways.
Sure.
I was thinking about all the people who want to say Happy Holidays rather than Merry Christmas. And because you're not including Kwanzaa, you're not including Hanukkah.
I say Happy Holidays just because during the holiday season people say, "Kevin, Merry Christmas," and I'm Jewish and I celebrate Hanukkah, and it'd be awkward for me to say, "Oh, thank you, Happy Hanukkah to you too." So I just say, "Oh."
And see, that's cultural pressure.
You could look at it that way. I just call it how I want to say it in the moment, or respect for what I'm feeling at that moment.
And I guess what I'm thinking is, cultural pressure is a very powerful thing. You had said something earlier about how it was very important for students to be able to have the exposure that they benefit from.
Mm-hmm.
But teachers and parents and school districts and taxpayers, they can have a very narrow view of what the world should look like. And if you are a parent and your kid brings home a book that's about a lesbian couple, or even if your kid watches public television. So public television is, I'm sure a lot of people consider public television to be very woke, and public television can be seen not only in the urban areas but the rural areas. This year it was a thing about Peppa Pig, having two mommies,
Right.
And last year it was a thing about Arthur, Arthur had a friend, or Arthur was getting married, to another male, and those programs got shut down in southern states, In southern states and some rural communities, it's like, we don't want to see that, that's influencing our kids, So, this overlap of culture into the school system is, I think, all this stuff that happened in the Newburgh school system,
Sure.
A couple of years ago. Same thing. It's like, CRT issues, and, school board was saying, we're not going to have any kind of recognition of any special groups, as a way to make sure that the recognition that was happening wasn't going to happen. So in order to stop some of the recognition of some groups, we'll stop all recognition of all groups, And parents went crazy. But there wasn't really much they could do because it was the school board. And school boards are pretty much invincible.
I feel it would be a great way to help rural, urban, suburban, when it comes to school policies, is to really focus on the essentials. Forget a lot of the buzz, the noise that's going around, but focus on the essentials, such as like what can help with school policies, attendance policy. You know, attendance matters. Bowling policies, cell phone policies, fighting, respect, student code of conduct, like student discipline, like some of the essentials would be great to focus on. Or how about some of the policies that we could be changing for the better?
But Kevin, I mean, it's like, wanting to focus on discipline, for instance. Discipline, okay?
Yeah, that can go one way. I agree. That can go one way or another. But I'm not talking discipline in the fact like, all right, Johnny, like bend over, like you. I'm just talking somebody who is skipping school or fighting in school. It can't just be held unaccountable. There has to be some discipline, whether it's towards the parents, but things that can be changed for the better. How about like implementation for higher wages for educators, respect for the profession towards staff or teachers, or like I was saying, parents to be held accountable toward their kids, like teaching them life skills. The administration needs to be more hands-on and proactive.
See, I think you're missing the point. Because I think, one, administrators, the one thing parents don't want, school hands-on. I think that's the one thing, they're already pissed off about that. And I think the other thing is, like when I was bringing up the example of discipline could be anything. It's like the kid walks in with an LGBTQ shirt on, is the kid violating school policy? And if the kid doesn't take the shirt off, then the school disciplines him. They send him home or something. And see now, I mean, even though discipline was one of your subjects, it's like it's a whole world in and of itself when it comes to these woke school policies, what people call woke school policies.
Do you feel a school should be completely, what's undisciplined? Like, whatever you want, buddy, it's you can wear what you want, you can say what you want, and you can act what you want. There has to be some form of accountability.
Yeah, I mean, the schools, I mean, I'm sure most people know this, schools, I think by law, schools are what's known as loco parentis, which means in the absence of parents, the school is the parent. And so, the school has to have rules, that are in line with what the parents' rules would be for that community, right? So if the kid does something that violates the rules of the school, which the school assumes are in line with the laws of the preferences of the parent, then the school can invoke discipline. But it's like, if a kid is wearing a BLM shirt, I mean, now you're talking about the kid's First Amendment right to express themselves.
Right.
Now that's federal. It's like, okay, now what do you do?
Right. There was a reaction when I said the administration needs to be more hands-on and proactive, and you had a good visceral reaction. And in my view, and like, the school is shaping the child, and parents are putting their child into a school and help to further their education and further the best a child can be to grow into the future.
So you assume.
Well, I would hope. Yes, I would assume. I hope that that's what the school wants. To a degree, to a certain extent, I want that school to be proactive in helping our child grow to the best it can be. And I'm not talking about creating these strict laws and things that are gonna tamp down a child's education or overall belief system.
Powell's Books I saw a thing over the weekend where Powell's Books has a shelf in their main lobby of their main store in downtown Portland that is full of books that have been banned by schools.
Oh, really?
And it's like these are books that have been banned in city schools, in rural schools, and Powell's is trying to make a point here, I think. And I think it's a good point. It's not necessarily, we assume that just because, we hear about books being banned, that we assume that they're from small school districts. No, they're not always from small school districts. They could be from urban school districts as well, because, those parents may feel like the policies of the schools, especially in urban environments, are way too liberal for them and their tastes. and if they can have any say about it at all, they're going to sit, before the Salem Kaiser School Board or the Portland School Board or they're going to sit, they're going to go to their school board and they're going to fight for what they believe is in the best interest of their kids. And it's like, so what do you do with a situation like that? How do you go about making an environment to where parents and kids have free access to information that helps them think critically, because that's what this whole thing started about, critically think, which in turn makes them better able to navigate the world. How do you do that? Tell me.
Yeah, there are states that are they're just banning, two that come to mind is Florida and Texas. The governors of Florida and Texas are banning books and banning a lot of the teachings of things that they feel are crossing a line. But on the other spectrum, there's a states, the governor of Arizona, Katie Hobbs, just vetoed a bill that would have banned the teachings of critical race theory. She vetoed that bill because the Republican sponsor for that bill, Tom Horn, put in this bill to ban all teachings of critical race theory. But for some reason, ending instruction about racism in America has become the plank for the modern Republican Party. And I'm not sure why. I don't know why they are afraid.
You're not really.
I am not sure why they are. We could have a whole subject, a whole episode on why they are fearing the teachings of critical race theory.
Please no. Please. God, please.
That's a tough subject.
God, this one by itself was already.
Maybe more schools in rural America taught all about racism from the past and how it's affecting the present.
Well, that's what the 1619 Project was supposed to do, but it kind of got co-opted, Like here in Oregon, the Black Lives Matter movement kind of got co-opted by people who weren't really as much into social change as they were to just breaking things,
Yeah, I don't even know about that 1619 Project.
Yeah, if I understand it, the 1619 Project was an examination of how slavery began in the United States and how the United States benefited from the introduction of slavery through the history of how the nation was formed and the Constitution, in 3/5 of a person. Even the Oregon Constitution still has, and maybe they just took it out or maybe they're talking about addressing it, but there was something in the Oregon Constitution that said black people couldn't even be in the state, But what you had said about Arizona was, I didn't realize that. So that governor who took over from Jan Brewer, who was very conservative and very Republican,
Doug Ducey. She took over Doug Ducey, who was the previous governor. So Jan was the one before Doug Ducey.
Okay, so then that means that there has been a shift in thinking in the dominant politics in Arizona. And that's hopeful. And so that makes me think, I would say that's hopeful. So it makes me think like, okay, well, what else can we do? What else can we ensure? We can, maybe go back to the mission statements of schools and organizations that say that they believe in these policies, but don't do anything to enforce them. It's like if you're in a position in a company where you can have a hand in shaping how the company behaves, just goes to its own mission statement. If the mission statement says, we believe in equitable treatment of all employees, then begin there, because the company can't really get around its own words.
Right. From everywhere from rural to suburban to urban, the more we are educated, the more we can better understand the negatives and the positive impacts of everything that is thrown our way. The better we are educated, the more we understand what it's like to be in other people's shoes, and the more we can respect and give respect towards others.
I read this story about this lady who had a class, and the subject was doing something about Martin Luther King. So the kid was drawing a picture of Martin Luther King, and then he put a big X through the picture. And the teacher said, "Why'd you do that?" And he said, because in my house, we don't believe in Martin Luther King.
Mm.
And so the teacher said, who's your best friend in this class? And the kid pointed to a little black boy. And he said, well, you know, his family does believe in Martin Luther King. He said, why are you guys friends? You know? And see, that was when, and then the story says, that's when, because it was a team teaching situation, that's when the senior teacher came over to her and said, okay, look, probably better stop now, because this is something that this is probably going to end up with a discussion with the parents.
Right.
You know? I mean, and it's like that's the kind of thing where, that's the critical thinking part, right? Because that's the part where you get a kid to think about why they believe what they believe, right? But the fact that you have to negotiate it now with teachers and administrators, it just seems sad to me.
Sure. This is a great topic, and thanks, Don, for having this conversation with me. Listeners, we hope you had a good time listening. Please share any feedback you
Even
may
if you
have.
didn't, we're sorry about that.
Right. You can just go to countrydogcitydog.fm and share your opinion. We would love to read it. If Don says, like, just don't be a jerk, just share us your thoughts, but be cool, man, be cool, and we love to hear. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening. My name is Kevin Levy.
And I'm Don Merrill. There was another story here, Kevin. It's like, okay, and what I found was, it said young people.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. We're already 2 minutes
I know.
over.
I was watching the clock too. I'm thinking, okay, I'll just edit.
Yeah.
But they were saying young people are like tearing up the internet, trying to find everything that's being kept from them.
Mm.
So that's positive. That's very positive. You know.
You could feel free to like throw that in right now and edit it in.
I'm not going to do that. I think the way we ended it was fine. But,
Yeah.
But these are. I mean, if we get people talking, wow.
Tough.